Faith is a chain as much as it is a light. In the Imperium, where the Emperor is worshipped not only as Savior but as God, there are those who carry that chain to its final, crushing weight. Among them are the flagellants of the ecclesiarchy, men and women who have been stripped of identity, of freedom, of all humanity, and left with nothing but pain. They are called penitents, zealots, martyrs. They are the ones who whip their flesh to ribbons in the streets, who scream hymns as their backs bleed, who march in endless lines of self-inflicted torment. They are proof that in the Imperium, even faith itself is a weapon, one that cuts deepest not into enemies, but into the faithful themselves. The flagellant's life begins with sin, or at least with the accusation of it. Some are criminals, sentenced by priests to lives of penitence instead of execution. Others are simply broken souls, guilt-ridden by their own failures, convinced they must bleed to please the Emperor. And many are chosen by their families, given over as offerings to the ecclesiarchy to prove devotion, their bodies sacrificed to the endless rituals of pain. Once claimed, they are stripped of names, of homes, of pasts. They become nothing but bodies, tools of suffering, vessels of agony to display the Emperor's will. The rituals are endless. Chains wrapped around their torsos bite into skin with every movement. Spiked whips tear flesh from their backs until blood drips onto the stones of the ecclesiarchy's temples. Some drag great iron weights through the streets, their shoulders breaking beneath the strain. Others wear crowns of barbed wire, their scalps torn open, blood running into their eyes as they scream praises. Their voices echo through the hive streets, not as hymns of beauty, but as howls of anguish, the sound of faith twisted into madness. For the flagellant, there is no rest. Sleep is a mercy they are rarely allowed. They march in processions that last days, whipped forward by priests who shout sermons over their cries. They kneel for hours on broken stone, their knees shattered, their hands raised in endless prayer. They fast until their bodies waste away, then are force-fed only enough corpse starch to keep them alive for the next march. Their lives are measured not in years, but in scars. The more scars upon their flesh, the more their faith is praised. And when the flesh can take no more, when the body collapses beneath the weight of agony, they are dragged to the pyres, their broken forms burned as offerings to the Emperor they worshipped with every drop of blood. The people of the Imperium do not look away from them. They watch. They cheer. They cry with devotion as the flagellants bleed, for their suffering is a sermon in itself, a reminder that pain is holy, that suffering is the Emperor's will. The priests proclaim that their agony cleanses sin, not only their own, but the sins of the crowd who watch, and so their torment becomes spectacle, their agony a lesson. They are not allowed dignity in their suffering, nor privacy in their faith. Their pain is consumed like theater, and their deaths celebrated like victories. Yet behind their screams lies silence. For many flagellants, faith is not enough to sustain them. They break, their minds crumbling beneath endless torment. They scream not for devotion, but for release. They whip themselves not for piety, but because they are forced to. Their chains are not symbols of holiness, but shackles that bind them to a duty they cannot escape. Some still believe, clinging desperately to the idea that their suffering has purpose, that the Emperor sees them. But many no longer believe in anything at all. They are husks, bodies that bleed because they are told to, mouths that scream because silence would bring execution. Their faith is gone, but their suffering endures. The priests who control them wield this suffering like a weapon. They parade the flagellants through cities before great crusades, using their agony to inspire soldiers to greater zeal. They tie them to the prows of ships, their bodies whipped by void winds, their screams echoing through the decks as a warning to all who falter. In times of famine or plague, they drive them through the streets, proclaiming their blood as sacrifice to cleanse the hive. The flagellants do not choose these duties. They are forced into them, their bodies exploited until nothing remains but bone and ash. For the flagellant, death is both curse and release. Some die on the march, collapsing in pools of their own blood, their corpses trampled by their fellows as the procession continues. Others are offered up in grand rituals, nailed to crosses of iron, their bodies burned alive as the crowds chant praises. These deaths are not mourned but celebrated. They are said to be holy offerings, proof of devotion. But the flagellants themselves know the truth. Their deaths mean nothing. They are forgotten as soon as their screams fade, their names erased, their ashes swept into the gutter. And yet, The curse of the flagellant is not only their suffering, but what they reveal. For in their broken bodies lies the truth of the Imperium's faith, that it is not salvation, not hope, not peace. It is control. Faith is the chain that binds the masses, and suffering is the proof of obedience. The flagellants are not holy. They are warnings. They are tools of terror, reminders of what awaits those who falter, those who question, those who stray. Their agony is not their own. It belongs to the Imperium, wielded to break the hearts and minds of all who witness it. In the rarest moments, when the whips fall silent and the torches gutter low, some flagellants whisper to one another. They whisper not prayers but curses. They speak of dreams of freedom, of lives where suffering is not worship, where pain is not demanded. These whispers are quickly silenced by priests who punish them with greater torment. But still they spread, quiet as breath, fleeting as hope. And in those whispers lies the greatest heresy of all, the thought that suffering is not holy, but meaningless, that the Emperor does not hear, that the Imperium does not care, that all of it, the whips, the blood, the screams, is nothing but cruelty given the name of faith. The curse of the flagellant, then, is twofold. Their bodies are broken in endless rituals of pain, their lives consumed by suffering without end. But their souls are broken as well, forced to endure the greatest lie of all, that their torment matters, that their agony serves some greater purpose, that their screams reach the ears of a God who does not answer. In truth, their suffering is nothing more than another cog in the endless machine of the Imperium, another spectacle to fuel obedience, another flame in the endless pyre of mankind. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no peace, not even in faith. For the flagellant, prayer is pain, devotion is torment, and death is the only release. Their curse is to bleed not for themselves, not even for the Emperor, but for the Imperium that consumes them as it consumes all things. They are the final proof that in this galaxy of endless war, even faith is weaponized, and even the holiest lives are nothing but fuel for a God who cannot save them. To be born on an Imperial void ship is to be condemned before one even draws breath. These vessels are not merely ships. They are floating tombs, cathedral cities of iron and shadow, each one older than the memory of its crew. Their corridors stretch for miles, their holds house entire populations. Their decks echo with the footsteps of generations who have never seen the light of a sun. The void-born serfs who serve aboard them are not citizens in any real sense. They are slaves in all but name, bound to the ship as tightly as their own bones are bound to their flesh. They are born in its creaking hull, live their entire lives among its endless corridors, and die there. Their corpses fed to the recycling vats or thrown into the endless void between stars. The duties of a void-born serf are as endless as the stars themselves. Some are assigned to the engine decks, where the plasma drives roar with caged suns, their heat blistering flesh, their vibrations rattling teeth loose from skulls. Others labor in the gun decks, loading massive shells into weapons that can shatter cities, their ears deafened by the endless thunder, their lungs filled with soot. Others scurry through the life support tunnels, patching leaks, scrubbing filters, replacing pipes that groan like dying beasts. No task is small, for on a void ship every task is vital. A single leak, a single broken valve, a single loose bolt can kill thousands. And so the serfs toil without rest, their lives a constant chain of labor and fear. There is no freedom aboard these ships. Every aspect of existence is regimented, controlled, overseen by petty officers, priests, and overseers who brook no disobedience. The serfs sleep in vast dormitories where the air is heavy with sweat and breath, their bunks stacked in endless tiers, their bodies pressed together like corpses in a mass grave. They wake to the clang of alarms, march to their stations, work until their hands bleed, then return to collapse into restless slumber. Days and nights are meaningless in the void. There is only the cycle of labor, the endless grind of metal, the hum of the engines, the darkness beyond the hull. Superstition runs rampant among the void-born. They whisper prayers before stepping into new corridors, fearing the ship's machine spirit may grow angry. They wear charms of wire and bone, convinced they ward off the hunger of the void. They avoid certain hatches, certain tunnels, claiming they are cursed, that spirits stalk them. In truth, many of these fears are justified. The ships are ancient beyond reckoning, their halls haunted by the dead, their machine spirits vast and incomprehensible. To anger the spirit is to invite disaster, fires, depressurizations, reactor leaks, or worse. The tech priests assure the serfs that all is well, but the serfs know better. They hear the whispers in the steel, the groaning of the hull, the voices that echo through the vents in the dead of night. The punishment for failure is swift and merciless. A serf who falters in duty is beaten, starved, or thrown into the void. Collars and chains are common, as are executions carried out before hundreds to instill obedience. The serfs know they are expendable. There are always more children born in the dark, more slaves taken from conquered worlds, more prisoners sentenced to eternal service among the stars. No life matters aboard the ships. Only the ship itself matters. The vessel is eternal. The crew are dust, and yet even dust suffers. The serfs breathe recycled air heavy with the stench of countless lungs. They eat food that has passed through the same cycle 1,000 times, protein paste flavored with chemicals to mask its origin. They drink water filtered through pipes that have carried the blood of generations. Sickness festers, for the ships are vast and impossible to keep clean. Plagues sweep through the dormitories, coughing men to death, their bodies dragged away only for new workers to take their place. There is no reprieve, no cure, only the endless march of labor and death. Children born aboard the ships are put to work as soon as they can walk. Some are sent into the narrowest crawl spaces, crawling like vermin through pipes and vents too small for grown men. Others are trained for weapons duty, their hands blistered as they learn to haul shells larger than their bodies. Some never survive childhood at all, their lungs collapsing in the poisonous air, their bodies consumed by the ship before they even learn the shape of a star. Those who survive grow into the same cycle of toil, their lives already broken before they begin. The serfs have no escape. To flee into the void is death. To defy their masters is death. To dream of another life is futility. They are chained not by iron, but by the sheer vastness of the ship and the infinite gulf of space beyond it. Some cling to faith, whispering prayers to the Emperor as they scrape soot from vents or haul shells into cannons. They convince themselves that their suffering has meaning, that they are serving his will. Others curse his name, knowing that their lives mean nothing, that their suffering is not purpose but punishment. Most simply endure, too beaten to question, too broken to hope, and yet their curse is deeper still. For while soldiers may die in fire and workers in hives may at least see the sky, the void-born serfs know nothing but the ship. They are bound to its corridors, its decks, its iron walls. They never feel the warmth of a sun, never breathe untainted air, never see the beauty of the stars except through portholes smeared with frost. Their world is a prison of steel, and they are born prisoners. Some say that even their souls are bound to the ship, that when they die, they do not ascend to the Emperor, but remain in its walls, haunting its corridors, whispering their misery into the ears of the living. The serfs believe this, and in truth, who can say otherwise? The ships groan with voices older than memory. Perhaps they are the dead, crying out for release that will never come. The void-born endure for generations. Entire lineages live and die aboard the same decks, their family names tied not to planets, but to sections of hull, to gun decks and engine rooms. They inherit their duties as others inherit wealth, cursed to continue the same toil forever. For them there is no inheritance but chains, no legacy but suffering, and when they die they are replaced by their children, who will carry the same curse until the ship itself finally collapses into ruin. In the end, the void-born serfs are not remembered, not honored, not even acknowledged. They are ghosts in the walls, shadows in the machinery, their existence hidden beneath the grandeur of the ships they serve. They are essential, but they are nothing. Without them, the Imperium's fleets would collapse, its wars would falter, its dominion would crumble. But with them the cycle continues, endless and unbroken. Their duty is cursed not only because of their suffering, but because of its futility. They toil forever, but nothing changes. They die, but nothing ends. They are the proof that in the Imperium, survival is not life, and existence is not freedom. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no peace, not even among the stars. For the void-born serf, the void is not freedom, but prison. The stars are not lights of hope, but cold fires watching their suffering. Their curse is to live and die in chains they cannot see, bound to ships older than history, their lives consumed in the name of survival. They are not men, not women, not families. They are fuel, like all others, and fuel is always burned. There are many armies in the Imperium, but none so cursed, none so despised, as the penal legions. To march in their ranks is not an honor, nor even a duty. It is a sentence. These soldiers are not volunteers, nor conscripts in the ordinary sense. They are criminals, heretics, deserters, and the disgraced, dragged from cells and execution pits, stripped of dignity, and hurled into the endless wars of mankind. Their uniforms are rags, their weapons often the barest scraps, and around their necks hang collars of iron and circuitry, devices that ensure obedience through the promise of death. The penal legionnaire's life begins with chains. Arrested in the depths of the hive, captured on the battlefield, or taken after trial by commissars, they are bound and branded, their crimes carved into flesh or inked into their skin with crude tattoos. Some are murderers, others thieves, others simply unlucky souls who spoke the wrong words at the wrong time. The Imperium makes no distinction. A crime is a crime, and in the eyes of its merciless law, all are equally unworthy. But unworthy does not mean useless. To waste a body is to waste fuel, and so they are given a chance not at redemption, but at servitude unto death. The collars are fitted with explosives. Each one is tied to a commander's control, ready to detonate at the first sign of rebellion, cowardice, or hesitation. The soldiers march knowing that their lives are not their own. One false step, one flicker of disobedience, and their heads are nothing more than red mist. This knowledge breaks many before they even see battle. They shuffle in silence, their eyes hollow, knowing they are already dead men walking, and then comes the battlefield. Penal legions are thrown into the worst of it. Front lines soaked in fire, trenches where the dead pile higher than walls, assaults where survival is measured in minutes. They are used as shock troops, hurled at enemy guns to clear defenses for the more valuable soldiers who follow. They are fodder, meat for the grinder, their deaths counted not in mourning, but in logistics. 1,000 dead penal legionnaires is not a tragedy, but a calculation. A wall breached, an enemy slowed. A line held for one more hour. The weapons they are given are often inadequate. Scavenged laser guns with low charge, crude blades, sometimes nothing at all but clubs fashioned from pipes. Ammunition is scarce, armor non-existent. Their commanders care little. The collars ensure obedience, and fear ensures they will charge even into certain death. Some are promised pardon after 100 successful missions, but all know the truth. No one survives that long. The promise of redemption is a lie, a cruel trick to wring every drop of service from those already broken. Among themselves, the legionnaires are divided. Some cling to hope, whispering that if they fight hard enough, obey well enough, they might one day be freed. Others know better. They march with grim acceptance, their eyes empty, their voices silent, knowing that their only escape lies in death. And there are those who embrace the chaos of it, reveling in the slaughter, laughing as they charge into fire, eager to take as many enemies with them as possible before the end. Madness spreads quickly in such ranks, for hope is poison and despair is endless. The soldiers of the regular guard view them with contempt. They spit at them, curse them, treat them as less than human. To fight alongside penal troops is considered dishonor, for their presence is seen as a stain. Yet, in the darkest moments of war, when the enemy presses close and the walls begin to crack, it is the penal legions who are sent forward, their bodies forming the bulwark that others survive behind. The regular soldiers sneer at them, but they live because of them. The hypocrisy is as endless as the war itself. The commissars who oversee them hold no pity. They see only tools, bodies to be spent. Their whips crack, their pistols bark, their hands hover over the detonation triggers. To hesitate is death, to falter is death, to question is death. The collars are not only weapons of execution, but chains of terror. Some commanders delight in their power, detonating collars for amusement, watching as heads vanish in sprays of gore to remind the others of their fate. Discipline is maintained not through respect, but through fear, and fear is a language the penal legions know well. For many, the greatest curse is not the collar, nor the death, nor the contempt of others. It is the knowledge that their lives no longer belong to them. Their choices are gone, their fates sealed. They are puppets of the Imperium, stripped of humanity, reduced to flesh moving at the whim of others. Some whisper prayers as they charge, begging the Emperor for forgiveness. Others curse his name, spitting blood as they fall. But all march, all fight, all die, because they must. The collar ensures it. There are stories of legions who rose in rebellion, tearing off their collars, charging not the enemy but their masters. These rebellions never end well. The collars detonate in waves, heads exploding in crimson fountains, bodies collapsing in heaps. But still, the stories persist, whispered like prayers. Tales of men who chose their own deaths rather than the ones ordered for them. For the penal legionnaire, even the dream of rebellion is a kind of salvation. Proof that not all humanity is erased, that choice still flickers even in the darkest chains. Yet, for every story of rebellion there are 1,000 of despair. Legionnaires who marched into fire, knowing they would not return. Men who clawed at their collars in madness, begging for the release of death. Women who carried the bodies of comrades, only to be ordered forward again, their grief cut short by detonations. The ground where they fall is soaked not only in their blood, but in the silence of their stolen lives. And so, the penal legions endure, endless waves of the damned, marching beneath banners that will never honor them, fighting wars that will never remember them. Their curse is not only their death, but their erasure. No record will bear their names, no monuments will mark their graves. They are ash, smoke, forgotten shadows consumed by a machine too vast to care. They are not soldiers, not martyrs, not even men. They are fuel, and fuel is always burned. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no peace, not even in rebellion. For the penal legionnaire, there is only the march, the collar, and the fire. Their curse is not only that they must fight, but that their deaths mean nothing. They are the proof that in the Imperium, some lives are not lives at all, but only debts to be paid in blood, until nothing remains but silence. There are countless cursed duties in the Imperium, but perhaps none are so final, so absolute, as that of the servitor. For while the scribe may rot in parchment, the medic may be broken by screams, and the renderer by blood, the servitor knows no escape. It is not a role one takes, nor a job one is assigned. It is a punishment, a fate, a transformation. To be made into a servitor is to be stripped of everything human, of memory, of thought, of will. It is to be reduced to meat and machine, a tool of flesh bound to labor until the body rots away. The citizens of the Imperium live their lives with this shadow over them. Every man, every woman knows that failure, disobedience, or simply the wrong fate of birth may end in servitude everlasting. A criminal caught stealing rations, a soldier who falters in battle, a scholar who reads the wrong words, a worker who fails his quota, any may be seized, dragged before the authorities, and sentenced. And once the sentence is given, there is no return. The condemned are taken by the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and the transformation begins. The process is not swift, nor merciful. First, the body is stripped. The condemned are shaved, cut open, fitted with tubes and wires. Limbs may be replaced with augmetics, metal arms ending in drills, saws, or welders. Eyes are replaced with optics that see only what the masters wish. Mouths are gagged, tongues cut away, vocal cords severed, for a servitor does not need a voice. Then comes the greatest violation, the lobotomy. The skull is opened, the brain burned, sliced, rewired, purged of memory, of thought, of soul. What remains is a husk, a blank slate, into which the commands of the Mechanicus are etched. They are programmed, like machines, to perform their task without pause, without question, without mercy. When it is done, the man or woman who once was is gone. Their body still walks, still breathes, but the soul has been erased. What remains is a servitor, mindless, voiceless, tireless. They shuffle through the factories, hauling loads too heavy for men. They crawl through the tunnels of starships, welding pipes, repairing engines, scouring decks. They stand as gun thralls on battlefields, their arms fused to heavy weapons, firing until their flesh burns away. They are everywhere in the Imperium, silent shadows of what was once humanity. For those who see them, they are unsettling reminders. Every citizen knows that a servitor was once a man like them, a woman like them, perhaps even a friend, a brother, a child, but no one speaks of it. To dwell on the truth is dangerous. Better to pretend they are machines, tools, property. Better to look away when they shuffle past, their faces slack, their eyes blank, their bodies marked with scars of augmetic grafts. Better not to think of the fact that the fate of the servitor hangs over everyone, that at any moment, anyone may join their ranks. But though the Imperium insists that servitors are mindless, some whisper otherwise. Some say that fragments of the old self remain, buried deep beneath the programming, screaming silently within. That somewhere, within the hollowed skull, the person still exists, trapped in a prison of flesh and iron, unable to speak, unable to move, forced to watch as their body labors endlessly. These whispers are dismissed as heresy, but the fear remains. And sometimes the fear proves true. There are reports of servitors who twitch strangely, who weep though they have no voice, whose eyes glisten with something like recognition when they see a familiar face. The Mechanicus purges these immediately, tearing them apart, repairing the flaws, but the rumors spread, and those who hear them shudder, knowing that servitude may be eternal, not only in body but in soul. The transformation into a servitor is not always punishment. Some are bred for it, raised from birth to be harvested into flesh machines. Their parents sell them to the Mechanicus for food or shelter, or they are taken as tithe from the hives. They grow up in cages, never knowing freedom, their lives nothing more than preparation for the inevitable. They are taught obedience, silence, stillness. When they are finally lobotomized and bound in iron, there is no resistance, no scream. They were broken long before. Others are volunteers, or so the propaganda claims. Some are promised glory, told that to become a servitor is to serve the emperor more fully than any soldier. Others are desperate, driven by hunger or despair, willing to give themselves up in exchange for shelter for their families. But whether punishment, tithe, or choice, the end is the same. The flesh is stripped, the mind erased, the soul extinguished. The body remains, but the man is gone. For the tech priests who create them, there is no pity, no horror. To them, flesh is weak and the servitor is a triumph. A man without thought, a tool without rebellion, a machine of flesh that labors without rest. They praise the Omnissiah for each one made, each one fitted with augmetics and bound in code. But even they know the flaws. Flesh rots, muscles fail, bones break, servitors decay, and when they do, they are cast aside, their bodies fed to the vats, their augmetics stripped for reuse. They are tools, and like tools, they are discarded when broken, and yet, despite all of this, the servitors are necessary. The Imperium could not function without them. They are the workforce that keeps the hives alive, the ships sailing, the weapons firing. Without them, the galaxy would collapse into silence and ruin. They are hated, feared, pitied, but they are indispensable. And so they endure, their ranks endless, their numbers growing with each failure, each heresy, each tithe. The Imperium consumes its people, and the servitor is the final proof of this truth, that even individuality itself can be devoured, replaced, erased. To see a servitor is to see one's own future. To hear their silence is to hear the silence that awaits all who falter. They are the specters of the Imperium, walking reminders that humanity is nothing but fuel, that flesh is only another resource to be stripped and bound. Their curse is not in their labor, nor even in their silence. It is in what they represent. They are the truth of the Imperium made flesh, that the individual does not matter, that the soul does not matter, that only the machine of survival matters. And in that machine there is no place for humanity at all. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no peace, not even in oblivion. For the servitor, death does not come with silence. Death comes with wires and augmetics, with commands burned into flesh, with a hollow eternity of labor. They are the damned who cannot even die, condemned to walk forever in bodies that no longer belong to them, until the Imperium itself crumbles into dust. There are duties in the Imperium that rot the body, and others that break the spirit. But among the worst of them are those that poison the mind itself. Knowledge is a dangerous thing in the 41st millennium. To know too much is to invite damnation, to see truths better left buried. And yet there are men and women who are forced to stare directly into the abyss of forbidden lore, to touch it, to absorb it, and then to erase it utterly. They are the truth keepers of the officio censorum, and theirs is a cursed duty unlike any other. The Imperium demands control not only over bodies and labor, but over thought itself. Entire archives sprawl across the galaxy, repositories of words, records, histories, and lies. Among these countless tomes lurk heresies too ancient to name, fragments of knowledge too dangerous to allow survival. The truth keepers are the ones who sift through it, their hands blackened with ash from burned parchment, their eyes red from endless nights of reading, their minds straining beneath the weight of what they are forced to see. Their task is simple. In description, find the lies, find the heresy, and destroy it. In practice, it is torment. For to destroy a thing, one must first know it, and to know it is to be changed by it. They sit in dimly lit chambers, surrounded by stacks of parchment and screens that flicker with ancient script. The smell of dust and ink clings to them, though beneath it lurks the reek of charred pages and burned flesh. The truth keepers are given documents to review, and they read line by line, word by word, seeking corruption. The words whisper to them, insidious, seductive, promising truths hidden beneath the lies of the ecclesiarchy. They whisper of chaos, of gods that promise freedom from servitude, of histories where mankind was not bound in chains. Some of these words are madness, others fragments of truth, but to the reader, it makes no difference. The moment they enter the mind, they remain there, festering like a wound. Each truth keeper is sworn to resist, to purge, to destroy. They mark the offending lines, cut them from the parchment, or feed the entire book into the fire. The flames consume the heresy, but not the memory of it. That remains, etched into the soul of the one who read it. They cannot unsee the promises of freedom, cannot unhear the whispers of gods who care, cannot forget the visions of a galaxy where man was not shackled to the Imperium's endless war. They destroy the words, but they cannot destroy the doubt they plant. And so, day by day, their faith is eroded, their certainty stripped away. Some truth keepers cling desperately to their faith, reciting litanies under their breath as they read, scarring their own flesh with purity seals to remind themselves of their devotion. They bleed as they work, their blood dripping across the pages, a desperate offering to the emperor to preserve their souls. But faith is a brittle thing in the face of such poison. It cracks, it crumbles, and eventually, it breaks. Others fall, silently into heresy, their eyes shining with secrets they should never have known. They begin to keep fragments of forbidden texts, scraps hidden beneath their robes, whispers written in the margins of their own journals. They convince themselves they can resist, that they are only preserving the knowledge for study, for safety. But corruption is insidious. Once it takes root, it spreads until it consumes everything. The officio knows this. They know that most truth keepers cannot endure their work forever. That is why they are watched constantly, their chambers patrolled by inquisitorial agents and arbites. Those who falter are removed swiftly, dragged screaming from their desks and executed without ceremony. Their bodies are sometimes burned alongside the very texts they were reviewing, their ashes mingling with the heresies they failed to contain. The survivors see this and are reminded of their fate. They know that no matter how devout they may be, their work will one day break them. It is only a matter of time. There are stories whispered among them of texts that cannot be destroyed, books that resist fire, records that rewrite themselves when erased. To read such a thing is to be doomed, for the knowledge sinks into the mind like hooks and never lets go. A truth keeper who encounters such a text is marked, their eyes hollow, their speech faltering. They speak in fragments, in contradictions, as if two voices battle within their skull. They are executed swiftly, but sometimes not swiftly enough. Madness spreads like contagion, infecting others with doubt before the flames take it. The worst fate, however, is not execution. It is survival. Some truth keepers endure for decades, their minds filled with endless fragments of heresy, their dreams plagued by whispers of gods and freedoms. They live hollow lives, shunned even by their peers, their eyes always distant, their voices always quiet. They become shells, shadows that shuffle from one text to the next, destroying words even as they are destroyed by them. They are never free. Even if they retire, even if they escape, the words remain. The heresy never leaves them. They are broken long before their bodies fail, their minds trapped in a labyrinth of doubt and silence. The Imperium pretends they do not exist. Their work is hidden, their names erased, their sacrifices unacknowledged. Officially, heresy is purged by fire, clean and absolute. But the truth keepers know better. They know that heresy cannot be destroyed so easily, that it seeps into the cracks of the mind and festers there forever. They know that they themselves are infected, that every book they burn leaves a scar they cannot erase. They know that their faith is fragile and that one day it will fail, and so their duty is cursed beyond measure, They are forced to carry within them the very poison they are sworn to destroy. They are damned by the words they read, damned by the knowledge they cannot forget, damned by the silence that binds them. They cannot speak of what they know, cannot confess, cannot seek forgiveness. They can only endure, their minds unraveling, until the Emperor's mercy comes at last in the form of a bullet or a flame. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no peace, not even in ignorance. For the truth keepers, knowledge is a curse, and their duty is to bear it until it destroys them. They are the proof that in the Imperium, even the mind is not free. Even thought itself is shackled, broken, and consumed. And for those forced to guard the truth, the greatest horror of all is knowing that one day they will join the very lies they once sought to burn. There are few duties in the Imperium more abominable, more soul-wrenching than those of the corpse starch renderers. For while the soldiers die with laser gun in hand, while the scribes wither beneath parchment, and while the medics prolong pain with trembling fingers, it is the renderers who are forced to confront the ultimate truth of the Imperium, that even the flesh of its citizens is nothing more than fuel. In the hive cities where billions huddle in shadow and filth, where hunger gnaws like a living beast, food is scarce, and waste is forbidden. Every resource is used, every scrap consumed, and death itself becomes an ingredient. Those who labor in the corpse starch mills are the ones who take the bodies of the dead and grind them into sustenance for the living. The process is as simple as it is horrifying. Corpses are collected from hospitals, battlefields, execution pits, and alleyways, loaded into carts, and dragged through the dark arteries of the hive to the rendering plants. There, the renderers receive them, their hands already slick with blood, their nostrils filled with the permanent stench of rot. The bodies are stripped of clothing, jewelry, augmetics, and teeth. Then, piece by piece, they are thrown into vast grinders, their bones shattered, their flesh torn to slurry. This slurry is boiled, treated with chemicals, strained, and pressed into grayish blocks of protein known as corpse starch. These blocks are cut, packaged, and sent upward into the hive, where they are consumed by the starving masses without question. The renderers know the truth. They know what lies behind the ration cubes and the flavorless loaves. They know that every bite of bread, every mouthful of gruel, carries with it the taste of human flesh. They live with this knowledge every day, and it breaks them. They see the faces of the corpses in their dreams, hear their screams in the hiss of steam and the churn of the grinders. The stench never leaves them, no matter how they wash, no matter how they pray. They walk among the living, but all can tell what they are, for the odor clings to their skin, a reek of death that marks them as surely as any brand. People recoil from them, whispering curses, treating them as outcasts, though the very bread in their mouths comes from the renderer's hands. For many, the worst torment is not the smell or the labor, but recognition. Among the heaps of corpses that arrive at the mills are often familiar faces, neighbors, comrades, even family. In the Imperium, death does not spare anyone, and when the bodies are carted off, they all arrive in the same place. To see the face of a brother upon the pile, to drag the limp arm of a mother into the grinder, to watch the features of a friend vanish into the slurry, that is a torment words cannot describe. Some renderers break down, weeping as they work, only to be beaten by overseers and forced to continue. Others grow numb, their hearts petrified, their eyes hollow, as they shovel loved ones into the machines without hesitation. The horror becomes routine, and that routine kills whatever humanity remains. The renderers are not permitted to speak of their work. Officially, corpse starch is derived from organic waste, plants, animals, even vermin. To admit the truth is heresy, punishable by death. But everyone knows, deep down, they know that the Imperium would never waste flesh, that the endless hunger of the hives is too great. They know that what they eat is their neighbor, their comrade, their child, and yet they choose silence, because to acknowledge the truth would drive them mad. Only the renderers cannot escape it, for it is carved into every fiber of their being, every breath they take in those foul halls. They are condemned to live the lie they help perpetuate, carrying the weight of a secret everyone pretends not to see. Some renderers attempt to cling to faith, telling themselves that their work is holy, that by recycling the flesh of the Emperor's servants, they grant them continued purpose. They whisper that the bodies are blessed fuel, that the fallen live on in the strength of the living, that every bite consumed is a prayer. These lies comfort some, but for most, they eventually ring hollow. There is no holiness in the grinding of bones, no sanctity in the boiling of flesh. There is only the endless churn of machines, the hiss of steam, and the screams that echo in the mind long after the body is gone. Others turn to madness. They begin to taste the flesh themselves, devouring scraps stolen from the grinders, convincing themselves that to consume the dead directly is to share in their strength. Cannibal cults form in the shadows of the rendering halls, groups of renderers who believe themselves chosen by the Emperor to absorb the essence of the fallen. They are discovered, executed, and thrown into the grinders themselves, their bodies churned into the very food they once worshipped. But the madness always returns, spreading like rot among those who cannot endure the silence. The children of renderers bear the curse as well. Even if they never set foot in the mills, they are shunned, treated as unclean. No one wants to marry them, no one wants to touch them, for fear that the taint of death clings to their blood. Many are forced to follow in their parents' footsteps, for no other work will accept them. Thus, generation after generation, the curse continues, entire lineages bound to the endless cycle of death and consumption. For them there is no escape, no chance of redemption. Their fate is written in the blood of those who came before, and they can do nothing but endure it. The Imperium does not honor them. There are no monuments for the renderers, no hymns sung in their name. They are not remembered, not thanked, not even acknowledged. They are shadows, ghosts in the machinery, their suffering hidden beneath the propaganda of glory and faith. And yet without them the hives would starve. The guard would falter. The war machine would grind to a halt. They are essential, but they are despised. Necessary, but hated. Without them, billions would die. With them, billions live, never knowing the true price of their survival. And so the renderers endure, their minds breaking, their souls withering, their lives consumed by the endless grind. They walk through the hives like specters, their eyes hollow, their hearts empty, their skin reeking of death. They know that one day they too will be dragged into the mills, their bodies stripped, their flesh churned, their bones ground. They know that their own children may one day eat them, as they themselves have eaten their fathers. The cycle is endless, the curse eternal. In the grim darkness of the far future there is no peace, not even in death. For the corpse-starch renderers, death is not an end, but a beginning. It is the moment they join the endless tide of flesh, their bodies ground into sustenance for those who will suffer the same fate. They are the proof that the Imperium consumes everything, that nothing is sacred, that no life is spared. Their duty is cursed not only because of what they do, but because of what it reveals, that in the end, mankind devours itself, and the Imperium calls it survival. There is a special kind of cruelty in the Imperium reserved for those who are ordered to heal, for in the galaxy of the 41st millennium, healing is not an act of mercy. It is not done to ease pain, nor to preserve life for its own sake. Healing, in the Imperium, is simply another weapon in the endless arsenal of war. Those tasked with this role, the battlefield medics and surgeons of the Guard, know this truth more than anyone. They know that their duty is not to save, but to preserve just enough of a man to throw him back into the fire. Their hands are stained not only with blood, but with guilt, their minds shattered not by death, but by the countless times they drag broken men back into a world where death would have been kinder. In the makeshift medici tents, where the stench of antiseptic battles with the iron reek of blood, the wounded scream in unending chorus. Men with limbs blasted off thrash against straps as crude augmetics are bolted into raw flesh. Others beg for death only to be silenced with injections of pain-dulling serums that numb their bodies but do nothing to soothe their despair. The medics work without pause, their hands trembling as they drive needles into arteries, sew torn flesh with wire, or saw through shattered bones. They do not have the luxury of care or time. The wounded are endless, the supplies always dwindling, and the orders always clear. Make them fight again. Whether a man will survive beyond the next engagement is irrelevant. Whether he suffers agony so great that his screams echo for days is of no consequence. What matters is that he can lift a lasgun, pull a trigger, march a few steps before collapsing again. That is enough for the Imperium. Many medics whisper that their duty is worse than killing. To kill is to end suffering. To heal, in this cursed place, is to prolong it. Each man dragged from the edge of death is another soul condemned to more pain, more despair. The medics are forced to look into the eyes of those they save, to hear their gratitude or their pleas for mercy, and to know with absolute certainty that they have not granted mercy at all, only stolen it. Their hands keep men alive, but their hearts rot with the knowledge of what that life means. It is not healing. It is punishment, drawn out across endless days. Some medics are conscripts themselves, soldiers plucked from the ranks and ordered to serve their comrades in this way. They have no training, no knowledge of anatomy or medicine, only crude manuals and the brutal guidance of overseers. They learn quickly, or they die, their mistakes paid for in the lives of others. Their tents are littered with men who bleed out upon the tables, their bodies twitching as the medics fumble with clamps and bandages. The survivors know that their saviors are barely more than butchers, carving them apart in the desperate hope of keeping them alive. And so trust dies quickly in the trenches. Many soldiers beg their comrades to finish them on the field, rather than carry them to the tents, for they know what awaits inside. But for the trained medici, the burden is heavier still. They know the true science of flesh, the ways to heal properly, to restore life. Yet they are forbidden from using it. The Imperium does not care for skill beyond efficiency. They are not allowed to linger on a single patient, not allowed to waste supplies on those deemed unworthy. Their knowledge is shackled, twisted, and reduced to crude measures that keep the war machine moving. They carry within them the torment of knowing how to heal, but being forced to wound instead. Their oaths, once sworn in hope of saving lives, are broken daily, shattered beneath the weight of Imperial doctrine. Many fall into despair, their hands steady but their minds collapsing under the screams that never end. The medics also bear the stain of triage, the cruel system of choosing who may live and who must die. On the field, with bodies piled around them, they must decide in an instant which men are salvageable and which are not. A soldier with a missing arm? Patch him, strap a gun to the other. A man with his guts torn open? Too much effort, end him quickly or leave him to bleed. A guardsman burned by promethium skin sloughing from bone? Inject stims, push him back into the fight, let the flames finish the work later. The medics become judges, executioners, torturers, and healers all at once. Their choice is measured not by compassion, but by utility. They cannot save everyone, so they stop trying to save anyone. They only prolong, only extend, only keep alive what can still be used. Some detach entirely, their eyes glazed, their voices hollow. They speak in monotone as they saw through bone, their minds elsewhere, already lost. Others break in different ways, their hands trembling uncontrollably, their laughter echoing through the tents as they stitch wounds closed with crude wire. There are stories of medics who carve prayers into the flesh of the dying, convinced that the Emperor will grant strength through scripture etched in blood. Others carry talismans of bone, ripped from the bodies of their patients, whispering to them as they work, begging forgiveness. Madness is not rare among them. It is inevitable. The soldiers who survive their tables often return to the lines as little more than husks. They march with metal limbs that ache with every step, their nerves fried by stims, their minds clouded by trauma. They are not men anymore, but shadows dragged forward by duty. They know they should be dead. They know they have been cheated of their release. They curse the medics even as they obey orders, even as they fire their weapons with trembling hands. They do not see them as saviors, but as jailers, keeping them chained to a life that no longer belongs to them. And yet, the medics continue. They cannot stop. To falter is heresy. To refuse is execution. They work until their hands are raw, until their eyes bleed from sleeplessness, until their own bodies collapse upon the blood-soaked floors. Even then, they are dragged back to their stations, patched up crudely by their fellows, and sent to work again. Their duty is endless, their suffering unending. They are not spared, not relieved, not honored. They are consumed like every other servant of the Imperium, broken until nothing remains but silence. In the rare moments of quiet, when the tents are still and the wounded lie in uneasy sleep, the medics sit in the shadows and weep. They weep not for themselves, but for the countless faces that haunt their dreams. The men they kept alive only to watch die again. The screams that echo in their ears long after the battle is over. They pray for forgiveness, though none comes. They beg for mercy, though they know none exists. They are trapped in their duty, bound by chains of faith and fear, unable to escape. unable to rest. And so their curse is clear. They are healers who cannot heal, saviors who cannot save, servants who cannot refuse. Their hands bring not peace but suffering. Their work does not grant life but prolongs death. They know this, and it breaks them, piece by piece, until they are hollow shells moving through blood and shadow. In the Imperium of man there are many fates worse than death. But for the battlefield medic, the cruelest fate of all is to live long enough to steal death from others, again and again, until the Emperor himself takes pity, or until madness finally claims what is left. There are few tasks in the Imperium as soul-breaking as those that deal with the dead. The wars of mankind stretch across millions of worlds, and every battle fought leaves behind fields of corpses. Soldiers fall by the thousands, by the tens of thousands, their bodies scattered across trenches, bunkers, and blasted wastelands. Yet the Imperium does not leave its dead to rot in peace. The Imperium has need of every fragment, every scrap of flesh and bone, and so there are men and women whose cursed duty is to collect the fallen, strip them, and consign them to their final use. They are not soldiers, not warriors, but laborers, the corpse collectors of the battlefield. They arrive when the guns fall silent, when the last echoes of last fire fade into the choking smoke. The air is heavy with the iron stench of blood, the reek of burnt flesh, and the sour rot of spilled guts. The collectors move with carts and chains, their faces hidden behind crude masks soaked in incense to drive away the stench, though the smell seeps into their skin, into their hair, into their very bones. No amount of washing can ever remove it. The stink of death becomes a permanent shroud they carry with them, marking them wherever they go. Others avoid them, muttering prayers under their breath, as if the collectors are cursed themselves. Their task is simple, yet endless. They walk among the corpses, prying weapons from stiffening fingers, cutting belts, stripping boots, and dragging the bodies into piles. Some are burned, their ashes scattered into the air to choke those who breathe it. Others are dumped into mass graves, trenches dug deep and filled with thousands of bodies stacked like cordwood. Still others are harvested, their flesh carted away to feed the rendering mills, their bones sent to the mechanicus for grinding into nutrient paste. There is no dignity in their end, only utility. A guardsman who gave his life for the Emperor is reduced to fuel, to scraps, to rations for the next soldier who will take his place. The collectors do not fight, but they are closer to death than any soldier. Day after day, they drag corpses through the mud, their hands touching the cold flesh of comrades and enemies alike. Their dreams are filled with the glassy eyes of the fallen, staring endlessly into nothing. Some swear the bodies whisper as they pass, voices too faint to be real yet too clear to dismiss. Others claim the corpses twitch, that the dead reach for them, that their mouths move in silent screams. The commissars dismiss these tales as weakness, but the collectors know the truth. In the Imperium, death is never clean, never merciful. Sometimes the bodies are not truly dead, only broken, gasping, clinging to the last threads of life. And it is the collectors who must decide whether to finish them or to throw them onto the piles with the rest. Their suffering extended until oblivion takes them. For many collectors, the greatest horror is not the sight of the dead, but the repetition. Every battlefield looks the same after a time. The same broken trenches, the same shattered bunkers, the same endless heaps of bodies. The faces blur together, the uniforms change, but the screams are the same. A man could walk through 100 battlefields and never tell one from another, because they are all the same grave, the same silent testimony to the endless war. This sameness gnaws at the mind until the collectors can no longer distinguish the living from the dead, until they look upon their own comrades and wonder how long it will be before they too are dragged onto the piles. The soldiers fear the collectors more than they admit. To see one is to be reminded of their own fate. They whisper that the collectors are half dead themselves, their eyes hollow, their souls already buried in the graves they fill. Some claim the collectors are cursed by the Emperor, doomed to walk the battlefields forever, unable to die, their punishment eternal service among the corpses. Others insist they are simply broken men, criminals given this duty as punishment. But whatever the truth, none envy them. To carry the dead is to carry their silence, their weight pressing into your shoulders until your spine cracks and your mind withers. And yet the Imperium cannot function without them. Every war fought, every victory won, leaves behind oceans of dead. Without the collectors, the fields would overflow with corpses. Disease would spread, morale would break. The collectors are the unsung foundation of the war machine, clearing the ground so that new battles may be fought upon the bones of the old. Their duty is thankless, their existence despised, but they are essential, and so they endure, even as their minds shatter, even as their bodies fail. When one collapses, another is forced into their place, the chain unbroken. Some collectors take to whispering prayers as they work, begging forgiveness from the Emperor for desecrating his servants' bodies. Others go silent, never speaking again, their voices stolen by the endless stares of the dead. Some grow violent, lashing out at comrades, their minds unhinged by years of decay and rot. These are put down quickly, for madness spreads like plague among them. Still, the madness cannot be eradicated entirely. It festers in the silence, in the weight of each corpse dragged, each eye that refuses to close. There are tales of collectors who vanish into the piles themselves, crawling into the graves to lie among the dead, never rising again. Others are said to carry tokens from the corpses, fingers, teeth, scraps of flesh, as if binding themselves to the ones they bury. Whether it is madness or devotion, no one knows. The collectors themselves rarely speak of it. They keep their silence, their secrets buried as deeply as the bodies they drag. To witness their work is to glimpse a truth the Imperium does not speak aloud. Soldiers are not heroes. Their deaths are not glorious. They are fuel, resources, meat for the grinder. The collectors know this better than anyone, for they see it with their own eyes, day after day, year after year. They see how easily a guardsman is reduced to ash, to bone, to gruel. They see how quickly names are forgotten, how the Emperor's light does not shine on the dead, only on those still useful to the machine. They know that in the end every man, every woman, every child is only another body to be carted away, another piece of flesh to be stripped and burned. And so their duty is cursed, not only because of what they do, but because of what it reveals. The collectors cannot escape the truth they carry. They know that the Imperium does not honor its fallen, does not care for their memory. The Imperium consumes them as surely as any tyrannid swarm, grinding them down to nothing, leaving only silence in their wake. The collectors walk among this silence, breathing it, carrying it, until it becomes part of them. They are no longer men or women. They are shadows, ghosts who live among the dead. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no peace, not even in death. For the soldiers, the end may come in a flash of pain, a scream lost in the roar of battle. But for the corpse collectors, death is a companion that never leaves their side, a weight they carry until it crushes them. Their duty is endless, their suffering unending, their minds broken long before their bodies fail. They are the proof that in the Imperium, some fates are worse than death, not because they kill, but because they never allow you to die. There are duties within the Imperium that do not merely demand labor or loyalty, but the erasure of the self. Among these, the endless bureaucracy of the administratum towers above all, a mountain of parchment and decree so vast that entire generations are consumed by it. To serve in its ranks is to be buried alive within paper, smothered by ink, and drowned in orders written centuries before you were born. Soldiers at least can dream of death in the field, a final moment of violence that ends their torment. But the scribe has no such fate. His death comes slowly, by inches, as the years grind him into dust beneath the weight of tasks that no one will ever notice. Imagine a hall the size of a cathedral, lined with rows upon rows of desks. Each desk is occupied by a hunched figure, their faces lit only by the pale glow of lumen strips. The air is thick with the stench of mildew, ink, and sweat. Parchments pile higher than a man's head, spilling across the stone floor, each one a fragment of a decree passed down from distant Terra. The scribes write endlessly, copying documents by hand, a tradition so ancient and rigid that no machine may interfere. Day after day, night after night, they scratch their quills across parchment until the sound becomes a droning chorus that burrows into the skull. They are not permitted conversation. They are not permitted rest beyond the narrow allotments prescribed by their overseers. Their only prayer is whispered silently, that the day's quota might be met before the lash falls upon their backs. The cruelty is not in the labor itself, but in its futility. Many of the documents copied are redundant, unnecessary, or outright meaningless. Records of regiments long extinct, tax levies on planets lost to tyrannids, decrees from governors dead for centuries. Yet the scribes are forbidden from questioning. They copy because they are told to copy. Because the Imperium demands that the machinery of law and order continue without pause. They know their work changes nothing. They know their words vanish into archives so vast they might as well be burned. But still they write, and write, and write, until their hands wither into claws, until their eyes blur into blindness, until their minds fray into silence. Some go mad. They begin to see patterns in the endless texts, hidden codes that whisper of forbidden truths. They believe the Emperor speaks to them through the ink, that each line of script conceals a prophecy. Others begin to doubt, realizing that the words they copy are not holy decrees but meaningless babble. Madness spreads like rot in those halls, and when it becomes too visible, the overseers remove the afflicted. Where they go, none return. Perhaps they are sent to the black ships, condemned as heretics. Perhaps they are fed to the corpse starch mills. Perhaps they are simply discarded in the dark alleys of the hive. It does not matter. Their place at the desk is filled within hours, the chain unbroken, and yet for some, the madness does not consume but transform. These scribes become something worse, zealots. They convince themselves that the endless copying is not meaningless but holy. Every letter written, every word transcribed is a prayer to the Emperor. They scrape their flesh raw as they kneel before stacks of parchment, begging forgiveness for every mistake, every smear of ink. They work until their fingers bleed, smearing red across the lines, whispering that the Emperor will know their devotion. The overseers encourage this, for zealots never falter, never question. But those who cling too tightly to faith often break the loudest, screaming litanies as they tear the parchments to shreds, convinced that heresy lurks between the lines. This duty is not confined to a single planet, nor even to a handful of worlds. Across the Imperium, there are millions of scribes shackled to their desks, their lifetime spent in silence and ink. Entire generations are born into the administratum, trained from childhood to transcribe, calculate, and record. They never see the sky. They never hear the wind. Their world begins and ends at the edge of their parchment. For them, the galaxy is not a place of stars and war, but of lines and words, an ocean of meaningless decree. And when they die, their bodies are carried away, their desks filled within moments, their lives erased as cleanly as spilled ink wiped from the page. It would be easy to dismiss these people as insignificant. After all, what is a single scribe compared to the might of a guardsman's lace gun or an Astartes bolter? But the Imperium cannot function without them. Every order given, every shipment dispatched, every regiment mobilized, all of it passes through their hands. The machinery of the Imperium is not powered only by blood and steel, but by ink and parchment. The scribes are the veins through which its lifeblood flows, even as they are slowly consumed by it. And so, their curse is not only their suffering, but their necessity. They cannot be freed. They cannot be spared. They must continue, for without them, the Imperium would collapse into chaos. The soldiers in the trenches, when they speak of cursed duties, often laugh bitterly about the scribes. They imagine them soft, pampered, useless. But those who have glimpsed the halls of the administratum know better. They know that madness festers there as surely as it does in the battlefield. They know that silence can break a man more completely than any bolter round. They know that to be condemned to such a life is to be stripped not of blood, but of self. In the end, the battlefield grants death. The desk grants only oblivion, and so the scribes scratch their quills, their lives measured not in years but in parchments filled. The halls echo with the sound of endless writing, a sound that drowns even the beating of their hearts. And in that sound, one can hear the truth of the Imperium, that every life, no matter how small, no matter how broken, is fuel for the machine. That the Emperor demands not only the bodies of his servants, but their minds, their hope, their very souls. The battlefield may break the flesh, but the desk breaks the spirit. And in a universe where there is only war, that may be the cruelest fate of all. The Imperium of man is a vast engine of endless war, its gears powered not only by the blood of its soldiers but by the silence of its countless servants. For every guardsman who dies screaming on the battlefield, for every Astartes who bleeds his last into the mud, there are millions more who labor in anonymity, unseen, unremembered, and unthanked. These are not the warriors who stand in the light of the Emperor's gaze. These are the ones cast into shadow, bound to duties that no sane man would choose, condemned to tasks that gnaw at flesh, spirit, and soul. In the darkest corners of the galaxy, there are jobs that even death envies. The first whispers of such duties come not from the high lords or the priests, but from the lips of soldiers in the mud, from the muttered tales of those who glimpse their fates and shudder. They call them cursed duties, roles within the Imperium that are so consuming, so horrific, that even the most battle-hardened men break beneath them. Not because of blades, not because of bolter fire, but because of the sheer weight of endless, merciless expectation. In a universe where survival is already a punishment, these duties are a sentence beyond imagination. Consider for a moment the scribes of the administratum. At first glance, they seem harmless, clerks bent over parchments, scribbling away in the dim light of lumen globes. What horror could be found in ink and parchment? But to serve as a scribe is to be condemned to silence that stretches not for hours or days, but for centuries. The Imperium's bureaucracy is so vast, so swollen with meaningless decree, that the act of transcription itself is a form of torment. Men spend lifetimes copying documents whose originals were lost millennia ago, their quills scratching away until their fingers are little more than calloused claws. The ink stains their skin, their eyes cloud over, their backs twist into hunches. Some forget their own names, repeating only the endless liturgies of law and decree. They wither in shadowed halls where no voice is ever raised above a whisper, until death claims them at their desks. And even then, another is placed in their chair before the corpse is cold. To die in the mud of a battlefield may be brutal, but to be slowly erased by parchment and ink is a fate that eats at the mind until there is nothing left. Beyond the halls of parchment lies a darker calling still, the corpse starch renderers, the men and women who work the great recycling vats of hive worlds. They are the ones who take the bodies of the dead, the fallen guardsmen, the wasted workers, the starved children, and process them into food that will be fed to the living. Day after day they drag corpses into vast grinders, stripping them of clothing, teeth, and flesh, tossing them into machines that churn death into paste. The stench is beyond comprehension, a foul miasma that clings to their skin and never washes away. Their hands are soaked in blood until their very pores exude iron and salt. The horror is not only in the act, but in the knowledge that every bite of bread, every ration cube consumed by the hives above, is made from the flesh of those who once stood beside them. They know this truth, and it breaks them, even as they keep working, because to refuse is to join the bodies in the vats. If the scribes lose themselves to silence and the renderers to filth, then the corpse collectors of the battlefield are shattered by the things they see. After every battle, when the guns fall silent and the smoke clears, they are sent out across the fields of ruin. They are not soldiers. They are not priests. They are laborers clad in ragged uniforms, pushing carts and dragging chains. Their duty is to strip the dead. They pry laser guns from the stiffening hands of corpses, tear boots from feet still dripping with blood, cut the armor straps from men whose eyes still stare glassy into the sky. They stack the bodies into heaps, piling them like refuse, then drag them to pyres or mass graves. They do not fight, but they walk closer to death than most soldiers ever will, their hands upon thousands of bodies, their dreams filled with the stares of the fallen. The collectors whisper to each other in the dark, confessing that sometimes the corpses twitch, sometimes they cry out, sometimes they reach for them even after the soul is gone. Whether it is truth or madness, no one can say, but all who serve in this duty eventually break, their minds lost to the endless sea of the dead. Yet perhaps the most cursed of duties belongs to those who serve not the dead, but the nearly dead. In the apothecaries of hive cities, in the medici tents of the guard, there are men and women whose task it is to keep the broken alive, not for their sake, but for the Imperium's. They inject stimulants into soldiers with half their organs torn apart, strap augmetics onto stumps of arms, and pump failing hearts with machines just long enough to return them to the battlefield. They know full well that their patients will not survive, that they will collapse in agony within hours, but still they patch them together, because the Imperium does not care for the man, only the weapon. To save a life is not their duty. To extend suffering until every ounce of usefulness is drained, that is the true expectation. The medics pray with hollow voices, their hands shaking as they drive needles into already shredded flesh, knowing that what they bring is not life, but a crueler death delayed. Many end their own lives, unable to bear the weight of their role. Yet even this escape is denied to most, for suicide is judged heresy, and heretics are repurposed into servitors, their punishment an eternity of silent labor. There are also the truth keepers, those tasked with censoring knowledge across the Imperium. The Officio Censorum employs men and women who scour archives, burning books, erasing records, destroying fragments of history that contradict the official word of the ecclesiarchy. They sift through forbidden lore, page after page, exposed to heresy they cannot unsee. Their duty is not simply to destroy, but to absorb, to understand enough to obliterate it utterly. The corruption seeps into their minds, twisting dreams, turning prayers into whispers of doubt. To read a book of chaos is to invite damnation, yet to destroy it one must first read. These truth keepers walk the razor's edge of sanity, knowing that the very act of doing their duty damns their souls. Some fall to heresy, their minds consumed by what they have seen. Others cling to faith until it breaks them, their final words nothing but screams as the Inquisition burns them to ash. The Imperium demands all things of its people. It demands their bodies for war, their hands for labor, their voices for prayer, their silence for obedience. But in these cursed duties, it demands something more. It demands the breaking of the mind, the annihilation of hope, the hollowing of the soul. These jobs are not rare. They are legion. In every hive, in every regiment, in every corner of the galaxy, there are men and women bound to duties that are worse than death itself. They endure not for glory, not for honor, but because they have no choice. The Imperium does not allow choice. The Imperium only allows duty. In the grim darkness of the far future, war consumes all. But for those trapped in these cursed roles, war is not fought with lasguns or bolters. It is fought with quills, with bone saws, with bloodied carts and screaming silence. They are not remembered. They are not honored. Their names are not carved upon monuments, their sacrifices not sung by choirs. They are shadows, broken and forgotten, yet without them the Imperium would crumble. Their duty sustains the empire of mankind, but at the cost of their humanity, their sanity, their very souls. And so the first truth becomes clear. The worst death in the Imperium is not death at all. It is the duty that forces a man to live long after he wishes only to die.